The Starfleet life with the USS Dauntless. Are you brave enough to be a Starfleet officer? Do you have what it takes? Greetings, everybody. I am Admiral Swart, Commanding Officer, USS Dauntless, and this is the briefing with the Admiral for Stardate negative 269162.1. I am the Admiral in question, and today we're going to be talking about something that I think is relevant to a lot of our members who, at the moment, who are dealing with some of these kinds of issues, and that is the topic of reputational management, how to build and manage a reputation within the Dauntless, within Region 8, within Starfleet, and in general. We're going to be looking at this from specifically a Dauntless-focused point of view, but I think a lot of these skills and a lot of these ideas we'll be covering today are generally applicable in life. So what is a reputation? Reputation is what people think of you, the opinion that people have of you. Why does that matter? I know it's been popular for some time, most of my life, to say, "Dang it all, I don't care what you think of me," and that's certainly an appealing philosophy to adopt. It sounds nice and freeing to be absolved of any kind of consequences of your action by simply not caring what people think of you. But frankly, that's not a very practical way of living in the world. We are a social species. We need other people to survive. And in order to get along with other people, we need to manage how those people think of us. We need to manage our reputation. And that is nowhere more true than here aboard the Dauntless. It's very important that our crewmates have a good impression of us so that they will trust us with various tasks, with various responsibilities, with building and maintaining personal relationships. Reputation is key for a number of reasons that we will articulate today. So reputation has a lot of different aspects to it. I'm not going to go through all of them. I think one of the most interesting ones, if you find one of my old lectures on the economics of the Star Trek universe, deals with money in the 24th century. Although it does appear to actually exist in the Star Trek universe, it doesn't. It's not the way we would think of it today. Currency in the 24th century is more solely a medium of exchange, whereas today money is, yes, it's a medium of exchange, but also it's a commodity in its own right. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent, but what I mean to say is that what has replaced money in the 24th century appears to be what I call reputational economics. The more people think of you, the higher people's opinion of you, the better your reputation, the more access you have to resources. Reputational economics. And frankly, that exists today. That's not something that we see only in the fictional Star Trek future. That's something that we see in the world. And that reputation is encoded in a lot of things. Least of all, or not, perhaps not least of all, perhaps most of all, your reputation is encoded in your ability to earn money. Money, of course, is very important to living a life in this day and age in the early 21st century. Currency is money, and that, yes, as Master Chief Kotzer says, equates to reputational points. Excuse me, my non-human companion is chiming in. I'm hoping that if I put him on my lap, that might appease him and stop the squeaking. So yes, reputation has real-world hard value, which can be codified in the form of currency. Now, here in the context of the Dauntless, we don't use currency internally. Everything we do here is completely free of charge. We try to avoid holding or managing any money at all if we can possibly avoid it. But we do have other kinds of currency in a way. We have reputational encoded ways of encoding reputation in our daily experience here. And one of those ways is through the rank structure. So this is something we've inherited from the military, well, specifically from Star Trek, and Star Trek based that on the military, where as you work your way up through the ranks, as you earn reputation, you earn promotions to higher and higher ranks. You start at the very bottom at E1, crewman recruit, and then you work your way up to higher and higher ranks. And the rank on your collar is kind of a shortcut. So somebody who's never met you before, because organizations like Starfleet are very large, there are thousands of people, we haven't met everybody. Somebody can, just by glancing at your uniform, I'm wearing the wrong uniform today, it's alternate uniforms week, but normally my rank insignia would be here on my collar. Just glancing at my collar, another crew member or somebody I've never met before can get an assessment of roughly what my reputation is within the organization. They can roughly estimate how much time, how much effort I've put into my Starfleet career over the years, over the decades, and get a sense of what how they should relate to me, whether or not I am trustworthy, whether or not I'm reliable, based on the pips I have on my collar. If I had no pips on my collar, that would mean that I have not yet proven myself. If I have one of these insignia here with the three chevrons and the three dots, that means that I've spent a few years in Starfleet and I've done some work. The same with these three dots over here. This chart doesn't actually show the full set of rank insignia all the way up to the Admiral ranks, so my rank insignia is actually not present on here. That needs to be fixed. It used to be on this page, but it's not here anymore. I will put in a ticket with the communications department. But my rank insignia would also then indicate to you that I've been a part of this organization for better part of 2 decades. In fact, it took me about 20 years to earn the rank of Admiral and put in a lot of work during those years. So by glancing at my collar, you can get a rough estimate of what my reputation is within the organization without necessarily knowing me personally. But hopefully once my reputation is successfully built up, you will have heard of me before we've even met. And that's really what we're trying to do. So we're trying to, whether we're starting out right at the beginning here or whether we years into our Starfleet career, we want to be building as positive a reputation as possible. And another situation where building a reputation might be very important is if you need to rehabilitate your reputation. Perhaps something has happened in your Starfleet career. Perhaps you've picked up a failed to report in flag because you missed a priority 1 mission and you didn't check in. If that's the case, or if you've just fallen off the face of the earth, you've had to deal with private stuff for a while and you've been out of touch with the rest of the crew and you've come back to us or something like that. If that's the case, you might need to build up that reputation from a low level back up to a higher level so that your crew will start to think of you positively, will start to trust you again, and start to consider you in high regard again. So reputation is quite important within Starfleet, but there are ways of keeping track and keeping measurement of where we are in that reputational hierarchy, one of which is rank. So just to clarify again, why do I care what other people think of me? So, oh dear, something's happened here. This is not good. I beg your pardon. I'm going to have to resolve that. Let me get off of that screen and I'll riff a little bit while this is happening. So why do we care what other people think? So first of all, there's a practical aspect to it because we want to make sure that people are, hang on. There we go. We want to make sure that people are trusting us with opportunities. We want to be able to progress our career in any number of ways, whether that's working our way up the rank promotion chart, whether that's earning positions of higher authority, or whether that's gaining notoriety within this or other organizations. Reputation matters for all of those reasons. So we want to be able to, hang on, let's see if that's working. That's looking better now. Good. Okay, sorry about all that. Okay, let's get back onto that screen. Much better. Right. So one of the reasons we want to have a good reputation is that if people trust you, if you have a good reputation, people like you and want to have you around. So reputation isn't quite the same as being loved by everybody. There is a tendency to want to conflate those two things. Just because people think highly of you doesn't mean they necessarily like you as a person, or just because people like you as a person doesn't mean they necessarily think highly of you. Those two things are not the same. So if people trust you, they're pleased to have you around, whether or not you're a nice person. So it doesn't really matter whether or not you're a nice person, but I suppose being nice might help you in building up your reputation. Having a strong, good reputation also opens doors for opportunities. The higher or at least the better or stronger your reputation, the more likely people are to offer you opportunities to expand your reputation even further, to put you in positions of authority, to lead a team, lead a mission, lead a department within the Dauntless, lead a division within a Starfleet auxiliary elsewhere in Starfleet, or perhaps in your day-to-day life, lead a department at your employer or lead a project there or something like that. Leadership is really the strongest way that you can earn reputational points. But no, it's not the strongest way, but it's one of the stronger ways of doing so. But even being a leader isn't necessarily the only way of doing that. Participating in one of those things is good too. But if people are seeing you, noticing you participating in these projects, that is how you're going to earn reputational points, if you think of it that way. It's a bit difficult to keep track of reputational points, as it were, as the Master Chief stated, in any sort of highly granulated form, because the rank promotion system is not very granular. There are only so many ranks available. So there's quite a big gap between crewman and petty officer third class. And if you want to keep track of your individual steps between those things, that can be quite tricky, especially when we're talking about from a reputational point of view. But I did do a briefing video some months ago talking about the rank promotion system aboard the USS Dauntless and how all of that works. So I would recommend you go and take a look through that video to get a better idea of how all of that is progressed and how we manage it. But so then what is the most important thing that you can do? Let's get practical. What is the single most important thing you can do to start building up your reputation here or anywhere? And the one thing you can do is show up. Just be there. If you are there, you can help, you can participate, you can cooperate, you can give orders, you can follow orders, you can pitch in, you can get your hands dirty, you can supervise, you can do anything if you're there. If you're not there, you can't do any of those things. People will base their opinion of you on whether or not you show up. If you don't show up, you will start to gain a reputation of being somebody who doesn't show up, somebody who's flaky, somebody who's unreliable, and somebody who can't be trusted. Showing up consistently every time, or as close to every time as you possibly can, that is what helps you to build a reputation of somebody who can be trusted, somebody who can be relied upon, and somebody who is present and there and available. Showing up is the single most important thing you can do to build your reputation. But once you're there, then what? Right? So you've taken this big step. The single biggest step you can take, possibly the easiest step, is just getting out of your house and being there. And I'm not even talking about specifically in-person activities, although in-person activities are very important. All of our priority 1 missions are in-person activities, so that's very important. But even online activities, we've got plenty of online missions that take place here on the Dauntless, here in our Dauntless Discord server, most of which are casual and social activities, but showing up, that's what matters. If you're there, even if you don't feel confident enough to actually participate in the mission, just being there to be part of the conversation, to have a chat, to watch the stream, to see what's happening, that is what matters. Being there is what counts. And by way of recognizing people who are showing up today, I'd just like to mention the people who are here in the chat. We've got Captain Van Krienen, we've got Master Chief Kotze, we've got Chief Newton, and we've got Apprentice Matthews who joined us here in the chat today. If you're interested in joining one of these missions, we record these briefings live every Tuesday in the middle of the day at 12:30 p.m. South African Standard Time. If you are an active duty member of the Dauntless crew, you're welcome to join us here in the screening room. I realize it's an awkward time. Not everybody is able to do that. So you're welcome to watch the videos after the fact on YouTube or Facebook. But unless you're here in the screening room as we're recording, unfortunately, your participation isn't recorded and we don't notice. So to address some comments, we don't have a lot yet, but we do have one from Captain Van Krienen. Pitch up and look at the pot plants. Look, ideally, you're doing more than looking at the pot plants. But if you're there, that's the single biggest thing you can do. Even if people are looking at the back of your head, at least your head is there, right? It's the not showing up that is the problem. So again, what do you do when you're there, right? Now you're here, you've arrived at the mission. What can you do to help to manage your reputation, to boost your reputation in the minds of the people around you? One of those things you can do is to become an active communicator, right? Speaking to people is a good way of getting them to recognize you, having conversations with people. Now, what do I mean by being an active communicator? I don't just mean making small talk, although that is a skill within itself. If you're able to have a conversation with somebody that isn't necessarily of much importance, just the act of having that conversation can help to cement a social bond with that person. But ideally, you want to be doing more than just having a social chat. You'd like to be actually communicating relevant information. Master Chief Koza says it's pretty much like in corporate where we say, be a team player and contribute, be consistent too. Yes, 100%. That is very true. But that starts with showing up, with being present, being part of the team. You can't help anybody if you're not there. So being an active communicator, part of that is just participating in chat. What does that look like? Well, here on the Dauntless, most of our activities take place on the Dauntless Discord, which is a social chat platform. There are dozens of us in the Dauntless Discord, and many of us are participating in a conversation all day, every day on a number of different topics. We have multiple channels which represent the different topics that we like to have conversations about. And if what you'd like to talk about doesn't suit any of the channels that you have access to, you're welcome to drop that into the mess channel, which is kind of the general chat, everything else channel. Even reserves and VIP visitors, former crew members, and other honored guests have access to the mess. We can have a chat with everybody there. Just being part of the chat. That's important. People will start to recognize your name. They'll start to learn what your point of view is, what your communication style is. They'll learn to know who you are as a person, and that in itself will help to elevate their position as their opinion of you. So showing up in the online sense means being part of the chat, just participating. It gets a little bit more formal than that. And when we're talking about when we're having meetings, we don't really have a lot of meetings here on the Dauntless, at least not in that sense. But we do from time to time have events where we are all working towards a common goal. Perhaps we're playing Star Trek online and we're working towards a common goal there. Perhaps we're working on what do they call them? The task force operations, TFOs. It's important to chime in and let the group know what you're doing. So speaking up in meetings, perhaps we're talking about a briefing and you've got some comments to make here in the chat, please do so. TFO, thank you, Captain, that's right. If you've got something to say about our topic of the briefing, please chime in the chat, either on Discord or on YouTube. We also stream there live. But if you have something to contribute, please do. And if we are having perhaps a project meeting about something that we're working on specifically, having your say is quite important. Even if we end up not going with what you suggested, just having that extra point of view available in the meeting can be very important for everybody to think about. Your position, if it's different from what everybody else has already talked about, can be valuable. And we see that happening in Star Trek all the time. So especially in Star Trek The Next Generation, it's almost a trope that whenever the Enterprise encounters some strange space anomaly or hostile aliens or anything else that they've come across, the first thing that Captain Picard does is he calls a meeting of his senior staff members and asks everybody's opinion. Now, I, as a commanding officer, don't host those kinds of meetings very often, but I do like to have dedicated chats whenever we're faced with something that we need to make a decision on. So although that's not a structured meeting, it is a dedicated chat for that topic, and everybody is encouraged to voice their opinions. Even if you don't have anything particularly new or novel to say, just simply saying, I agree with this position or I prefer that option, that in itself can be valuable. Another important part of communication in that way is to keep people in the loop. If you're working on a project, keep the people who are stakeholders in that project up to date on what is going on. So for example, in engineering, we're working on a couple of projects now where we're looking to replace a couple of our online systems that the Dauntless uses that have fallen into disrepair, that they're perhaps not as useful as they once were. So those of us in the engineering team are each working on our own to try and find suitable alternatives to those tools. But we need to be able to keep each other informed on what we are all doing so that we're not all investigating the same tool, wasting time, doubling our efforts, getting lost in the weeds. We need to know what the progress of the team is. And we do that by keeping each other in the loop, by using the communication tools we have at hand to keep each other updated on what we're doing. This is equally important, if not more so, if for whatever reason you're not able to participate in something. So when we have a priority 1 mission, which is typically one of our blood donation missions we have every couple of months, I encourage you to go look at the briefing video we did specifically on blood donation missions a little while ago to get more information about that. But if you are, for whatever reason, physically incapable of attending one of our priority 1 missions, it is imperative that you let us know that you're not coming. If you don't let us know that you're not coming, consequences might ensue, and that will seriously damage your reputation within the crew. That is how you pick up a fail to report in flag on your record, and nobody wants that to happen. We don't want that happening at all, and that will seriously damage your reputation going forward. Master Chief Kotza says, the morning stand-up on the bridge channel is fun, feels present. I agree. So we do kind of an informal daily catch-up on the bridge channel where each of us, well, not each of us, but some of us like to post a little message where we indicate what we're doing today, what our plan is for today, what the challenges are we're facing or what we're expecting to have to deal with, perhaps even a photo of what we're looking at that moment. And I find it's helpful to keep it to gain a sense of what everybody is doing. Not everyone does that, but if you are an active duty member of the crew and you can see the bridge channel in the Dauntless, I encourage you to do that. Just let us know what you're up to. Doesn't have to be any detail, doesn't have to be comprehensive, but it's nice for us to know what's happening in your life. So keeping people in the loop is very important, particularly under two circumstances. One, if you're working towards a common goal with a group of people, and two, if you're not able to contribute in the usual way, in the way that is expected, you need to let us know that that's happening so that we don't make plans for you and then you're not there. Colonel Hubert, thanks for joining us. I'm so boring. I have nothing to say in the mornings. I mean, I can certainly relate to thinking that. I've certainly thought that at times in the past, but that's okay. Even if you've just got a one-liner about, oh, I'm heading into the office this morning, or I'm hitting the gym a little bit later, or something like that, even if it's repetitive, even if it's the same every day, because frankly, a lot of people's lives are like that, that's okay, because then we know that about you. And we don't necessarily know that otherwise. So it's you don't have to. There's no obligation to doing that, but it's encouraged. We'd like to hear what you have to say about that. All right, so what's the next thing that you can do? So you've shown up at the mission or online or doing anything. You have shown up at the thing you need to do in order to build your reputation. You have taken steps to be an active communicator. What next? What's the next thing you can do? So once you have started to build up that reputation, you can start volunteering for responsibility. And I would recommend not jumping into tasks right away, especially if you are new to the Dauntless or new to a specific department or new to an auxiliary in Starfleet. Although it can be very exciting, it's easy to get swept up in the momentum of all of it. I would recommend taking a little bit of time to get a sense of what's going on, to get a lay of the land. Excuse me, my non-human companion is making squeaks again. I recommend taking a little bit of time to get a sense of the lay of the land and see who does what the corporate culture is of the group we're talking about, and getting an understanding of how you fit into that organizational structure before putting your hand up for responsibility. The reason for that is that as somebody who has been in the leadership position within this community for a very long time, what I often see is people who are very excited about joining the Dauntless, want to sign up for all kinds of things because they're very keen to help out. And then only after they've committed to a set of deliverables do they realize that actually their perception of what was being asked of them was quite different to the reality of the situation. And then we get into a situation where people can't follow up on what they've committed to do. And we want to avoid that. We don't want to saddle people with that kind of guilt, and we don't want to be stuck with relying on people to do things that they're actually not able to do. So I would always recommend, whenever you join a new community, whenever you join a new team, something like that, don't put your hand up for new responsibilities right away. Just start by showing up, being a good communicator, getting to know the group. And once you've gotten a sense of how everything fits together, that's when it's time to start thinking about what jobs that you can take on. And then once you're at that level, once you've taken on some responsibility that you know you can handle, that's quite important too. Don't take on things just because you think they sound like fun. Be sure that you have the capacity, the skills, and the ability to do the task that you've actually volunteered for doing. Once you're doing that, make sure that you are delivering consistently. First, make sure that you have the capacity to deliver consistently before you start doing it. And then once you have the capacity, once you've volunteered, make sure that you're doing it consistently. Make sure that people can rely on you doing that. It helps to assemble a team of people around you to help you doing that task. So if, for example, you're having a rough week, you're having some kind of domestic emergency that needs your attention, you've got people to fall back on who can help you out with those deliverables in that time. But then we're going back to being a good, active communicator again, making sure that people are in the loop so that either other people are able to fill in and do the work that you needed to do, or the people in positions of responsibility and authority aren't expecting that work from you because they know that you have issues going on in your life. And this comes back to that daily stand-up that the Master Chief is talking about. If we know that you're facing issues in your life, then we know to back off a little bit and not expect things from you that might not be reasonable in that moment. Master Chief Costa says, it feels like that when you're busy trying to develop healthy habits, very repetitive, but it helps to remind yourself and others ask you about it. Quite right. What it does is it opens you up to a little bit of social accountability. If you declare your intent to start doing something new with your life, something positive, something beneficial, and you announce that to people that you know, then they can remember that you've said that you were going to do that thing. You're going to start that diet. You were going to maintain that exercise regimen, and they might decide to call you on it if they notice that you're not following up with your promises. Even if it's not a direct commitment to another team or a group, simply having that social accountability can be beneficial in itself. And that's part of what being an active communicator is. Captain Franconia says, my days are quite the opposite. It's far too dynamic for me to know what is going to be happening. It is fun though. Yeah, that happens. And perhaps you can't anticipate what your day is going to look like. So maybe your version of the daily stand-up is, at the end of the day, you're letting us know what interesting things happened to you. And maybe it's both. Maybe both of those things are good for you. Either way, it's a good habit to get into, and I think it's worth doing. I don't, again, there's no obligation to do that. Nobody is expected to do that. I just think it's a nice idea. I think it was actually, it might have been Master Chief Kotze who got us started on that. And it's a good habit. I try to do that every day myself. Excuse me, once again. By the way, in case you're interested, this is the non-humanoid companion who is causing all this trouble. His name is Morsel. He is a member of Pet Fleet, and he is literally and figuratively a handful. So yes, we want to take on responsibility whenever we can. And what does that look like within the Dauntless context? What does taking on responsibility look like? Well, the easiest thing you can do, and you can do this as soon as you're done with your onboarding orientation, is you can volunteer to run missions. So missions are discrete activities that the Dauntless undertakes. Members of the crew are invited to participate. It can be done online via the Dauntless Discord. It can be done in person as away missions. We go out to a physical location. If you have gotten your head around how away missions work, and all that information is available on our website, we've even done a couple of briefings on the subject. Once you've gotten your head around how all of that works, you can start planning events and inviting people to them, even if nobody turns up. Simply the fact that you run the events is going to be noticed by the rest of your crew, and it's going to elevate your position, your esteem, your reputation in their minds. So running missions is a good way. Once you're confident in your in the department that you're comfortable in, remember I mentioned that you want to be getting the lay of the land before you volunteer. But once you have done so, a good way to start building that reputation is by volunteering for a duty station. Duty station positions, and again, I've done a briefing video on that as well. I recommend you go back and take a look at that for more information. But duty station positions are volunteer positions aboard the Dauntless, where members of the crew will commit to performing a certain set of tasks that are important for the running of the chapter, and are then relied upon to do that consistently over time. There is an induction process, kind of an onboarding, not onboarding, an induction process that helps us, on-the-job training, that's the word I was looking for. There's an on-the-job training process whereby we get you ready for the role, provide you with all the necessary tools and skills in order to perform the function before you even take the job. There's an entire video on the induction process as well in the briefing library if you'd like to go and take a look at that. One of the things that I always try to do whenever I'm in a position of responsibility is I always try to underpromise and overdeliver. Now, if you think about this in the Star Trek terms, that is how Mr. Scott, the chief engineer of the Starship Enterprise in the original series, maintained his reputation as a miracle worker. Whenever he was asked how much time it would take to perform a particular engineering function, repair the warp engines or get the transporters back online or whatever it was he was being asked to do in the moment, he would always overestimate the amount of time it would take so that everybody was pleasantly surprised when it was done ahead of schedule. And he developed a reputation as a miracle worker. And I found that that is beneficial too. Not only just to manipulate people's perceptions of you, but also you want to give yourself a bit of wiggle room, a margin for error. So although it might take 4 hours to complete a specific task, you never know what might arise in that time. So it's probably best to give yourself 8 or 16 hours just in case things go wrong, and then you can be ready ahead of schedule. Colonel Hubert says, I do that in my job also. Yes, I find it's beneficial. So you want to overpromise, underdeliver. Don't commit to things that you don't think you can do. And when you do commit, make sure that you've got enough margin for error, margin for error, and as much wiggle room around your deadlines as possible to make sure that you can get things done in time. And when you've mastered this level of responsibility, when you've mastered running missions, when you've mastered your duty station, it's time then to consider taking on more responsibility. Once you're good at it, once it's easy, then you can start looking for other things that you can start to take on as well around the ship, or perhaps in wider spheres of influence. Perhaps there are regional positions that might be relevant. Here's a good example for you. If you are interested in being a medical officer, the logical thing to start doing is to become the deputy chief medical officer or the chief medical officer aboard the Dauntless. Once you've mastered the duties associated with that, you might want to then become the medical assistant surgeon general for Region 8 in Starfleet International. Once you've mastered that, then there are other positions within Starfleet Medical that you might want to work up towards. While still doing all of the other jobs you were doing before, you're now adding to your portfolio of responsibilities, making your efforts reach wider and wider, and getting more and more people interested and invested in your reputation. Excuse me, let me have a sip of coffee before I continue. Yes, all right, so Captain McCrane says, I'm horribly terrible estimating time needed for stuff. Yes, I think most of us are. It's easy to guess that it might take a certain amount of time to do a thing, but you're almost always wrong about that. So you want to be able to make sure that you've got sufficiently large margin for errors, and that can be 150% on either side, just to be on the safe side. Master Chief Kotza says, commitment reminds me of stoic circles of control. Yes, indeed. We mentioned stoicism in the previous briefing video when we talked about the emotional side of mission readiness. And I suspect I'm probably going to have to do another one of these briefings at some point, talking about how stoic philosophy and Vulcan logic relate to life aboard the Dauntless. But this will definitely be one of the things that we mentioned in that briefing. All right, so once you've taken on some responsibility, how do you go about making sure that people regard you well? People are pleased to see you. Now, first of all, you're taking on the responsibility, which is good. You're doing the work, assuming that all is true. But then there's also sort of more, even more basic, even more fundamental things you can be doing to manage your reputation, to help people think positively of you. And that relates to basically being professional. There is an excellent course at Starfleet Educational Services, what used to be called the Marine Corps Academy. I think it's now called Training Command. Don't quote me on that. But you'll be able to find the course at Starfleet Educational Services. It's called the PD 100, Professional Development 100. And it's one of the best courses, I think, in the entire Educational Services catalog. And they have a lot of examples about ways to become more professional in your Starfleet life and in the rest of your life. A couple of the salient points that spring to mind from that course and from other things that I picked up over the years are things like be clean and fragrant. Nobody wants to have to deal with somebody who is smelly or dirty. Being clean and fragrant is a surprisingly important part of managing your reputation. Is this the right? Yes, here we go. This is the right one. So you can see the Starfleet officer here is clean and fragrant. You can, of course, smell him through your screen. Captain Franconia says, note for self, PD 100. Yes, PD 100 is great. You also want to make sure you have a proper uniform. So again, we've done an entire video on uniforms and what they look like and what they should look like. And there are other resources aboard the Dauntless of people who can assist you in getting your uniform right. You want to make sure a few things. First, you want to make sure that it's correct and accurate, which means that you're wearing the correct uniform for your branch of service. The details are accurate, so you have the right comm badge, the right rank insignia. Again, I'm pointing to my uniform as if I'm wearing my proper uniform today. The last week of every calendar month, we authorize people to wear alternative uniforms, which are other uniforms that are also correct and accurate, but they're not our standard uniform for the Dauntless. So I'm doing that today. But typically speaking, I would be wearing my normal 2375 standard duty uniform, and you have to make sure again that the right colors are in the right places. You're wearing the right branch of service color, the right rank insignia, the right comm badge. Any other insignia that you might be displaying need to be correct and accurate. That's the first step. After that, you need to make sure that it's clean, pressed, in good condition. It's not falling apart. You don't have loose threads. That's an issue that I'm facing with my uniform. It's just getting too old. It's starting to get a little bit ratty. It's time to replace it. So I'm going to be looking into that in the very near future as well. So proper uniform is very good. And then you want to make sure that you're communicating with people in the right way. And what I mean by that is being polite. When we're talking about communicating in text form, you want to try and make sure that your grammar and spelling are as good as possible. Nobody's perfect, especially when you're typing on a phone screen. You're going to make typos, you're going to make errors, and some of us don't speak English as a first language, but we try and do our best to put our best foot forward by using proper grammar and spelling as much as possible. And another important one is proper forms of address. Now, we exist again within a rank structure where people have spent time, sometimes many years, earning a particular rank that has been appended to their name. In my case, it's Admiral, but just in the room here, we have an assortment of different ranks: Captain, Colonel, Crewman Apprentice, Chief Petty Officer, and Master Chief Petty Officer. Some of those ranks have taken many years to earn. And so we, in recognition of that effort and in recognition of that reputation that those people have worked on building and maintaining, we address people within this organization by their rank and surname. So although my first name is Owen, I don't really go by that here. I'm addressed properly as Admiral Swart, Admiral, or in a crunch, Sir. I'm not really comfortable with Sir. Admiral will suffice. So any member of the crew, it is appropriate pretty much at all times within a Dauntless context to address them by their rank, which they have properly earned, and their family name, which is the military custom. We don't really use given names or first names here. Captain Frequentis says, grammar, smiley face, I speak deliciously sometimes. Look, yes, we all make our, we do our best. Not everybody can be perfect all the time, but as long as we're making an effort, I think that's important. Master Chief Kotzer says, an estimation I completely missed is how much time I spend on Starfleet activities. Average 130 hours per month. So it is important to find out what actually matters. Too much Star Trek Online and Duolingo. Well, Duolingo is pretty important, and I think Star Trek Online matters too. But yes, we want to make sure that we're prioritizing our efforts accordingly, because it's easy to get lost in wasting time in things that don't necessarily matter all that much. So proper forms of address are important. If you're not addressing people with a proper form of address, they're going to that might diminish your reputation in their eyes, because if they are addressing you correctly and you're not addressing them correctly in return, it's pretty rude, frankly, and we don't really want that. We have an ongoing battle with our emergency medical hologram here on board, who, although he has been programmed with everybody's proper form of address, he routinely forgets what to call people, and we have to have this conversation with him sometimes multiple times a day, reminding him what to call everybody. Incidentally, if you are an active duty member of the crew and you're interested in shortcutting all of that nonsense every time, if you create an account with the shapes.inc dashboard, Shapes is the platform upon which our EMH is built. If you create an account for yourself on Shapes, that can help you to set your own preferences there for the EMH right in his back end, and he's more likely to remember what to call you if you do that. You don't have to do that, it's not necessary, but if you're tired of having that conversation with him every day, that's one way of getting around that. So the next thing you can do to help manage your reputation with people is, if you don't know, as my grandfather used to say, if you don't know the way, ask a policeman. Ask questions, ask for help. Not everybody knows everything. Nobody's expected to know everything all the time. And if you're stuck on something, if you don't know the answer, ask somebody who might know. It's quite important. And in fact, that exchange in itself can help you to elevate your esteem in the eyes of the person that you're asking, because what it does is it communicates to them that you have identified that person as somebody who might have the right answer. They are knowledgeable and skillful in the area that you want to know more about, and you are asking them specifically. So it's a little bit flattering, and it's a professional courtesy to that person, and it elevates their esteem of you because they know that you want to make sure that you get it right. So you're asking the question to find out the right answer. But there are things to bear in mind when you're asking questions about things. First of all, you want to try and figure it out yourself, right? A lot of the time, the information that you need in order to get to the answer you're looking for is already available to you. A lot of the courses in Starfleet Educational Services and the Starfleet Marine Training Center, thank you, Colonel Hubert, for reminding me that, a lot of them are structured in such a way that you're not expected to memorize the answers to the questions. You're presented with a manual, and you are encouraged to take a look through the manual, familiarize yourself with the material, and then go and answer the questions in the exam with the manual with you in what they call an open book style. So you can, it's not so much about learning the answers to the question, although that's part of it. It's more about learning how to find the answers that you need, contextualizing the information rather than just memorizing all those facts. I found that very useful, and in constructing our own internal orientation courses that we do here on the Dauntless, I've followed a similar model. I don't require everybody to know everything all the time, but the courses are structured in such a way that you're encouraged to find out how to find the information that you need, know where to look, rather than know it in your head. Use the internet as an auxiliary cognitive module, kind of like the binars, where those things on the sides of their heads, you can store information in the internet. You don't necessarily have to store it all in your brain itself. So get good at learning where to find the information you need, not necessarily having to find it, having to know everything yourself. But then once you have been unable to find the information yourself, or perhaps you found some information and you need some clarification on it, you don't really understand what's going on, perhaps it hasn't been properly presented or well written or something like that, then you go to the person that you want to ask, and having done your research already, you are then able to ask intelligent questions. That communicates to the person that you're asking that you already have a fundamental understanding of the topic at hand. You already know a little bit about it. You've done the work already to try and answer the question yourself, but you were unable to find the specific information you're looking for in this particular arena. And that in itself is quite important. That's an interesting comment from YouTube. Koloth, the Klingon porn star. Human, I will turn you into my new Orion slave girl. That's nice. Not really sure what that has to do with the topic of this video, but thanks for your contribution, Koloth. Yes, I'm not really sure what that was about. Chief Newton says he hit the exit button instead of the chat button. That happens. Yes, not to worry. Welcome back. He dropped out of the stream for a couple of minutes, but here he is again. Okay, good. So once you've asked intelligent questions, another thing to remember to do, which one would think is obvious, but is far less obvious than one might imagine, actually pay attention to the answer that you receive. Right? If you ask it an informed question and then are given the information that is relevant to the answer, you want to be sure that you're reading the answer and processing that, thinking it through, and remembering what you've found, and also keeping it in place so that you can go back and access that information again later. And the reason I say that is because although it will elevate your esteem in the mind of the person that you're approaching when you ask an intelligent question to begin with, if that person is being asked by you that same question over and over again, by the time you've asked them the same question for the third time and not paid any attention to the answer, your esteem in their eyes will start to diminish. Your reputation will start to take a hit. Because they will no longer think of you as somebody who is actively seeking the information that you're looking for. They will start to think of you as somebody who wastes their time and who doesn't listen. So it's very important to remember the information, or at least store or properly take notes and have as a form of reference the information that you received when you've asked that intelligent question. You want to make sure that it's available to you so that you're not asking the same question over and over again. Now, there's nothing wrong with asking questions of clarification. If you ask once and you don't understand the answer, by all means ask for points of clarification. But if you're asking the same question over and over again and you're not paying any attention to the answer, people will start to have a poor opinion of you. So once you've taken responsibility and you've asked the relevant questions and you've made sure that you are extra professional and that kind of thing, you under promising and over delivering, how do you go further? What next step do you take to further enhance your reputation? And here's something that's recommended in plenty of the documentation around Starfleet, and that is work to become an expert in a specific field. So once you've spent years within the Starfleet context, you'll notice that there are plenty of little corners of the Starfleet experience. And this is true equally aboard the Dauntless, within Region 8, and within Starfleet as a whole. There are plenty of these little corners that you can find that are underserved. Perhaps something has been set up, a system has been built, or an academy course has been created that has been neglected. Somebody's had spent a lot of time doing it, or built half of it and then left the rest of it, or something is out of date and needs fixing. There are lots of these little things that need attention and not enough volunteers available to do all of that work. If you can find a little corner of Starfleet that is neglected in that way, and it's something that appeals to your skills and your interests, then you can become the expert in that area. You can be the person that people come to when they want to know about that thing. And that in itself is, I think, a very important um, way of advancing your reputation. If you become the person that people go to for a particular thing. Let me use an example. So one of our daughter ships is also a chapter here in Region 8, and that is the Charlton Station. And Captain Pretorius, who's the CEO of the Charlton Station, has quickly developed a reputation for himself in Starfleet International as being the guy to go to in the Starfleet Corps of Engineers for fantastic graphic design. A lot of the best documents that we get out of Starfleet, the membership handbook and various other things like that, along with as well as a lot of the updated logos that a lot of chapters and regions have been rolling out over the last few months, have all been designed either entirely or partially by Captain Pretorius. He has found this little niche with it for himself within Starfleet where somebody needed to be the expert, and he made himself the expert in that area. There are plenty of areas like that, both aboard the Dauntless, Region 8, and in Starfleet International as a whole, where you can find a niche for yourself and make yourself the expert, the place that people go to, the person that people go to ask those informed questions. So how do you do that? You find the area, you learn everything you can about that thing, you master what already exists, and then you start producing new material in that area. You can become the expert in that area. And that, I think, encapsulates the most important ways of how to become how to develop yourself a good reputation, specifically aboard the Dauntless, but also equally in Region 8 and Starfleet International and in other parts of your life as well. First and most important thing is show up. You can't do any of these other things if you don't show up, whether that's showing up physically in person or participating online. Showing up is the most important thing. We've got effective communication, needs to be done, needs to be involved. Then you've got taking on responsibility in order to develop that reputation there. Do some work, figure out what you're good at, and do that for the benefit of people around you. You want to be professional, that's clean, that's fragrant. You'll make sure that your uniform is properly put together. Make sure that you're polite, you're using proper grammar and spelling, using proper forms of address, asking for help when you need it, but making sure that you're doing so with intelligent questions, asking the right person, taking notes when you have received an answer so that you're not asking the same question over and over again, and then finding a corner of Starfleet or of your sphere of influence and becoming the expert, becoming the go-to person for that thing. Captain, excuse me, once again, this little guy. Captain Frank Kerner says his designs are amazing, talking about Captain Pretorius. Indeed they are. He's a very talented graphic designer, and all of the awards that he's picked up over the last couple of years are very well deserved. He's great. So let's not forget that, okay, before I conclude, we have one more comment from YouTube from a Braden Anderson. Why are you dressed like that? So this is a Starfleet uniform. This is not my typical Starfleet uniform. Usually I would be wearing the 2375 standard duty uniform, but the Dauntless has rules about wearing alternative uniforms in the last week of every calendar month. It's optional, but I choose to do so. This is one of my favorite uniforms. This is in fact the SDU, the shipboard SDU from the 2009 Star Trek film, which is also correct and accurate for my branch of service and with my rank insignia on my sleeve. So thank you for asking that. Colonel Ubay says it looks really cool. Thank you. I think so too. It's one of my favorite uniforms. I quite like it. Even the color's not that bad. I typically don't do well with wearing yellow, but this particular shade of yellow I think works well with my complexion, especially with the black collar. Thank you for asking. All right, so just to sum up pretty much everything we've been talking about today, and that is to say that a strong reputation isn't built overnight, but with consistent, keyword consistent effort and integrity, you can build one that will earn you not only the trust and confidence of your peers, but also the recognition that you deserve. Within the context of the Dauntless, Starfleet, Region 8, and other places, the recognition you deserve comes in the forms of things like rank promotions, commendations, awards, in other spheres, you get pay rises, you get promotions there as well. You get all kinds of benefits that come with building a stronger and stronger reputation. And that is something that you can do. The power is in your hands to build that reputation as strong as you can. But it starts with showing up, with being present, with being there. And that's what we need from everybody. Thank you. Speaking of showing up, thank you for joining us, Lieutenant Shimali. Unfortunately, you've missed most of it, but that's okay. You can catch up on YouTube later, but we appreciate you showing up. That's what matters. We recognize that this is an awkward time on the middle of the day on a Tuesday, South African Standard Time. Not everybody is expected to be present for these recordings, as long as you catch up on the video afterwards, but that's great. But thank you for joining us anyway, and that is it for today. So we're going to be calling it there. Swart out.